This is the second question that you get on the Russia Soviet Union exam, where you have to use an interpretation or a source. Now this is question 3a, and this question is, how do the two interpretations differ in their views? Now question 3a is, how do they differ? And question 3b is, why are they different? They're both worth 4 marks, and you should spend 5 or 6 minutes on them. Now, how you tackle question 3a, how do the two interpretations differ, is that you need to read both interpretations. Okay? So interpretation 1, read the text. Now for question 3a, how do the two interpretations differ, you do not talk about who wrote them, when they were written, and what the purpose was. That is question 3b. For question 3a, how do the two interpretations differ, you look at the text. So interpretation 1 talks about Russia forging ahead with new factories. It talks about much has been accomplished. In the industrial towns that he visited, there's new streets, trees and grass plots, houses of the modern type, schools, hospitals, workers' club. So, interpretation 1 suggests that the 5-year plans were a success, that there were jobs, that children of working mothers were cared for, that there were new schools and new houses. Interpretation 2, though, if you look at it, says that there was incompetence at the centre, starvation and death, and that the 5-year plans were a failure. So you've got, this is a negative one. Now all that you do is you state what the text says in each interpretation and how it is different. So for example, interpretation 1 suggests that Russia is, quote, forging ahead, and that every city has, quote, modern housing and, quote, hospitals and, quote, workers' clubs, and suggests that the 5-year plans were a success. Interpretation 2, on the other hand, suggests that, quote, it was a centre of human misery, starvation and death, that nobody had it well and the 5-year plans were a failure. That's how you answer question 3a. This is another question 3a. Describe how the two interpretations differ about the role of the provisional government. Now again, the important thing with the question 3a, how do they differ, is that you don't worry about who wrote it, when it was written, and why did they write it. That is for question 3b. So for the 4 marks for how do the two interpretations differ, you concentrate on the text itself. And you tell me, using quotes, how are they different? Now, interpretation A says that the provisional government failed in its attempts to rule Russia. Interpretation B says that the provisional government had some notable successes. So you tell me how they differ based on the text. That's the important thing, the text. Use quotes from each source to back up your points. This is another example of a question 3a. How do the two interpretations differ on their view of the Russian Civil War? So again, the important thing is that you don't, on question 3a, talk about who wrote it, when it was written, and why it was written. You concentrate on the text. Now, interpretation 1 suggests that it's the brilliance of the Red Army, okay, that defeats the Whites, okay, and they had brilliant propaganda and a united purpose. Interpretation 2 says that it was Trotsky's use of terror and the secret police and terror during the Civil War, which led to their success. So interpretation 1 in the text says it was the brilliance of the Red Army, the failure of the Whites, and propaganda was the reason for the success. And interpretation 2, it's Trotsky's use of the secret police, terror, and any means necessary that won the civil war for the Bolsheviks.